I'm gratified to see that everybody was enthusiastically and fully participating in that. Did you find that fun? Helpful? Is it going to help you respond to a crisis should it ever happen? Because that's my goal. So now we're going to share a little bit around, for just a few tables, around what they came up with and maybe advance that even more. My friend Ben's going to start us off, or someone from his table.
Okay, well, we thought it was kind of funny that we get to do a recall on manufactured, our supplier sending us manufactured pepperoni and sausages, since everyone sitting at this table is vegan. So here we go. Anyway, so apparently we have been shipped by our supplier these two products that we actually turn around then and put into pizzas and sell to Costco. So we received the call from our supplier indicating that they have discovered that products that they're using from the plant have a problem. So we record the time immediately, because of course at this point we don't know if we've actually received that lot number or whether or not we've actually have it in our freezer, or whether or not we have actually shipped it. So we record the time and immediately call CHFA, because we can't assume that they have. So we just simply inform CHFA that this is that we've received this call and that we'll get back to them within an hour. And then we call our distributor with the same story, just quickly, to inform them that we've received a call and we'll get back to them in an hour. And then we also call our one and only customer, which is in this particular case Costco, and let them know that we will get back to them, and also ask them for a business contact for after hours, because this is already 3:30 in the afternoon, so we don't want them to go home before we know. So at the same time that is happening, the other part of our team has already located the invoice from the supplier, determined the lot number, and confirmed we did actually receive this product, and so the batch reports are recalled. Unfortunately, at this time, we've also discovered that we have shipped it. So the next thing that has to happen is the CEO has to communicate with the customers and respond on social media and media to let them know that there's a problem, that we're sorry that this has come from our supplier and that has gone through our products. So with determining with the shipping records, we then determine exactly which Costco stores have it. And then we got down to this question. In our own lives, right now, the only Costco stores that we could handle are just locally. But the minute we started to get into the question, what happens when it gets to Costco across Canada, I couldn't answer that quite so well, because we know how we would pick it up and how we would dispose of it here in this province. We don't know so well how we would pick up it.
But you know what you don't know?
Yes.
And so you've got some questions to go back and get answers
Yes.
for. So that's, I'm not expecting completion right now.
Okay.
But sometimes just knowing what you don't know so that you can go and ask those questions in another round is what matters.
So we disposed, we tracked, we determined how it was disposed, and we made a record of that and communicated. Thank you.
Okay, so what did they miss? Anything? Public response? Well, they talked about media and they talked about social media. Yeah, I didn't hear you talk about employees.
We wrote that down, but I didn't read it out, sorry.
Okay, no, that's fine. Now, here's an interesting question, or it's a question that's interesting to me. Could you detail this specific crisis beforehand in a plan?
Oh, yes, we do.
This specific crisis? No. Pepperoni and pizza? No. The process they followed was good. They talked about, I liked getting an after hours comment because it's happening late in the day. That's kind of why I put the time in there. Or you want to make sure that you can stay in touch with people, those kinds of things. The process they followed there is pretty good. Could you capture that in a crisis plan? Yeah. Would that same process apply to just about any recall-esque crises or operational crises? Yeah. Am I right? See the point that I'm making there? When you're developing a crises plan, focus on what your process is going to be and the questions you need to answer. Okay, we need to get in touch with our customers. Have a list of your customers. Have a list of their after-hour contacts. Have a list of your key contacts, including their cell phone numbers. Have a list of your key internal team members who are going to be managing this, because you're going to want to bring someone in. You've got a PR manager who works for the company. Make sure you know what their cell phone number is. Make sure that's in your crises plan. If you use someone external, same thing. Legal counsel, your insurance company. Do some appendices where you're listing those types of real key things off so that you're never saying, what's their cell phone number? And everybody's going, I don't know. Because that's a problem, right? So a process-oriented plan. This is the process that we're going to follow. These are the people that we're bringing in. These are the steps that we're going to undertake. These are the questions that we're going to ask. If we don't know something, we're going to ask the question and then assign someone to go and know it. And then appendices of detail of who, contact information, that kind of stuff. Key media who cover your industry, your sector, in your regions is another great thing to have in your appendices. All of that's detailed in the template that I left on the table.
Morning, everyone. My name is Arminder Sahota. I'm with CMW Insurance Services.
Hello.
So malware attack is the crisis that we suffered. An employee opens an email with malware embedded that shuts down your entire network. All of your CRM, shipping, production, supply, and other systems go offline, along with your VoIP, Voice over Internet Protocol phone network, internet, and messaging services. It's 10 a.m. Monday. Your IT department says this looks like a primitive attack and that they should have it under control in a couple of hours.
All right, so you're good.
Yeah.
Couple hours, you're fine.
Yeah, so
right.
The nature of our attack, we kind of put it down as an operational/digital crisis.
Yeah.
What our process is going to be, now it's going to be tough because all of our communication is shut down, but notify your internal organization via a backup phone system. So ideally it would probably be your cell phones.
Your cell phones aren't affected. Yeah.
Yeah, so relay what's happened. Next, you want to notify your department and the department heads and make sure that they reach out to their individual departments. For example, the sales department contacts your clients and lets them know what's happening. And then also your operational department contacts the suppliers, the shippers, and lets them know what's happening. Now, if it's going to be a couple of hours, I mean, I guess you can assess, how much information you need to put out there. Unique considerations, check with your IT department, have them fully involved to, how we can minimize the damage. What kind of response you're going to have for media, social media, anything, if that's going to be the case. Next, your primary, secondary audiences, we kind of already touched on, it would be your customers, your internal organization. And then what you're going to say would be, consult your PR department so that they can relay what happened, why it happened, and how you're going to be fixing it.
Yep.
And then just for future, like going back to proactive, employee training. Make sure that you don't have employees opening up suspicious emails or malware, and have a good malware program in place, spyware program in place. And then as far as from an insurance standpoint, make sure that you have cyber policies and social engineering policies in place that can help alleviate the costs that are associated.
So you referenced the proactive work that you want to do around that, train people, give them some digital literacy around what to do with attachments and those types of things. Absolutely, that's important. What's the next thing your IT department's likely to tell you?
Basically, like why it happened and how to respond.
Oh crap, it's not that primitive after all. This is going to take us days. Yeah. It's a denial of service attack that's continuing. We've shut down one pathway, they're coming through another.
Sounds like BlackBerry.
Sounds like BlackBerry was the comment. That tickles my funny bone. The initial information that you get is going to be incorrect. IT department says, this looks primitive, it's going to take us a couple hours. Nope. It's not. Count on it taking more. You have a comment, yeah.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So you said that you guys are all shut down, everything's done. Cell phones are great and they're fine, but then your shipping department's contacting customers for late deliveries and sales department, etc. So how does that happen if not everyone has the contact information?
Hard copies. You make sure you kind of have like phone numbers, directories, and somehow have them available, whether it being hard copy or, like I said, the division heads have that information so you're not scrambling last minute.
Chances are your salespeople have their key contacts in address books on their cell phones. Having hard copies of those around is good practice. Having stuff in place that assumes that you may lose system access at some point is good. I mean, those little flash drives, and just having information on that, you can plug it into a computer that's not on your network and you're good to go, right? That kind of thing. Having a conference bridge is a good idea, even if you don't use it regularly in your business. But in a crisis response like this one, having one of those bridge services where everybody can phone in and you're on a conference call, say you're a national operation or you've got regional offices and that kind of thing, can be a great boon as well. If you don't have one, they're not expensive to get. Yeah. Pardon me? Zoom is cheap, yeah. And so, and all the major telecoms offer them as well. And so having something like that where you can get people together on their cell phones because your messaging services are down and all that stuff, it's not a bad idea. You can get them set up pretty quickly in a crisis as well, but it's going to cost you time. Who has a reputational crisis?
Hi, my name is Phil Watney. I'm a food safety consultant, and I do a lot of work with companies that are HACCP certified and GFSI certified. So my answer is going to be couched like that. The situation here is that we have the inspectors on the way. We have the health authority coming with the CFIA because our product has been linked to gastrointestinal disease and illness, and we now have a young girl in the hospital who may or may not live.
So this is a bad recall.
So this is definitely an operational something that happened to cause this. May not be our fault. We don't know yet. We're still looking at it. Obviously, there's a Class 1 recall going on. So we've apparently known about this for 2 weeks. There's, the person's been in the hospital for weeks. So this is a Class 1 recall. It's operational, but it's going to very quickly get reputational because now it's trending on social media. So we will have, because I'm going to assume that we're GFSI because a lot of us here are, but if you've made a plan, basically we will have been reacting to our initial customer complaints following the procedure, and that triggered off the need for maybe a recall. So we were in discussion with CFIA, and then in all likelihood they told us to initiate a Class 1 recall. So we're in the middle of a Class 1 recall. We will have, following our GFSI business continuity plan and recall plan, we will have started an internal and external communication to the interested parties, whoever that is. It's going to be our customers, it's going to be our suppliers, it's going to be the public, obviously. It's also going to be our GFSI certification body and our GFSI scheme holder, plus the government as needed. So we're talking externally, we're talking internally. We've got our legal expert going, we've got our technical expert. We're doing lots of investigations. We're trying to find out where it came from. We're hoping it wasn't us. We're ready to take the hit one way or the other. We have a very sincere apology, and the holding statement has come from our CEO based on his previous training in media communications, which is what we really need. So we all have these plans, but a piece that's missing is the training that our CEO did. So right now we're just waiting for the CFIA to come and the inspectors, and we welcome them with open arms, and we show them everything, and we basically cooperate as full as possible.
Okay. So a couple of things. First off, training is a key part of your preparation. Making sure if you're a significant enough organization in terms of scope, if you're dealing in risky areas, you're working with chemicals that would react poorly if they got into the environment, anything like that. Having someone in your organization who's trained at doing media interviews, who's trained at getting into social media and stuff is important. What are you doing in social media in that crisis?
It's the holding statement. I mean, at this point, we're still investigating.
That's your first thing.
That would be the first one. So
we're aware of the situation. We're investigating. Yeah. When you know more, you can learn from past experience. You don't need to reinvent the wheel. You can have someone come in. You could do it on one of these, right? And do a video. And I'd gun for 30 seconds now rather than a minute, and post that on your social media channels explaining what's happened and stuff. People will watch that. It can be really effective. You want to know what you want to say. You want it to be consistent with what you're already saying in media. Situation like that where there's a lot of media interest, that might be one of those situations where you might say to media, hey, you know what, and you can send out a little advisory and say, we're going to have, our CEO is going to speak to media at 1 o'clock or 10 o'clock or whatever it is at our offices. Come on by. Put on some coffee and have a genuine conversation with the media that are there. That way you get all the media at one time. Or just do one-off interviews. You're going to have to make those decisions. Having that process laid out, having those possibilities laid out in a plan, consider doing these things for media. Consider doing these things in social media. You can go through and say, no, yes. You're in fight or flight. Don't count on yourself to be able to come up with those ideas in the moment. Write them down beforehand and go through. And you may say, okay, we've got 5 different ideas here. We're not going to do these 4. We're going to do this one because that works in this situation. Great. Because you're ready to go and you can move fast. Who else? Who's one about someone behaving poorly? Someone behaving poorly.
Hello. Okay. Ours was one of our. Should I read out the thing? The Creep Catchers is in a social media video. It posted a man driving in our branded vehicle to meet a young girl after connecting with her online, and they posted about it.
Nightmare.
Yes, so our nature of crisis is reputational and operational because they were branded in our vehicle. Mm-hmm. The process that we're going to do is gather information both internally and probably at the same time do some sort of holding statement that says we hear your concerns, we're looking into what's going on. And then speak with, like I said, maybe our HR or senior leadership to see how we want to move forward while we gather more information.
HR is going to be a really key party in this one, right? Yeah.
As well as legal experts.
Yeah.
Some unique considerations would be, was it actually our employee? Was the vehicle stolen perhaps? What is the creep catchers? What is their kind of intention or their pattern of behavior?
Sure. So you're avoiding assumptions. You're going and you're tracking down some facts, yeah?
Yeah, we need more information. And then after we gather that information, I guess it would depend on how we would proceed with what we're going to say
Okay.
afterwards.
So it turns out that it is one of your employees and they were indeed thinking they were meeting up with a 14-year-old girl. What are you doing at that point? They're not coming back in the office, are
No,
they?
they're going to be
Yeah.
fired. They're done.
No. We will mail you your stuff. Right?
I'm just thinking about CBC and Gameshi.
CBC and John Gameshi, okay?
Would have been handled differently today
Yeah.
than it was then.
And it would have been handled differently by me as well
Yeah.
than they did. Yeah, John Gameshi. It took a long time. So someone at the back when I was talking was reminding me of what's happening with Lululemon now. They've just dismissed their CEO. And they've gone out with very little detail. How long do you think that's going to remain the case?
I'm surprised it still is.
Yeah. So if you're going to get somewhere painful in a crisis, if you're going to have to make a settlement payment, if you're going to have to fire people, if you're going to get somewhere painful, how do you want to get there? Fast. Because if you have an opportunity to tell a story, a painful story, a negative story, in one day, or let it drag on for a week, what's better? One day. Do the right thing right now. And get to the painful place right now. You're going to get there anyway. But you have to have the awareness and the advice to know that you're going to get there. And that's where those advisors come in. Look, I know this person's, your brother-in-law who's been caught with the creep catchers. He's got to go. That kind of thing, right? Because you have an emotional attachment to things within the business. You've got an emotional attachment to the business. Stepping back from that's hard, but it's necessary in these situations. Get to the painful place first, and don't have something drag out unnecessarily long, right? I think that's relevant in your example. Yes?
The one thing I'm not hearing through this entire conversation is key talking points that go out to every employee within the organization, because the media is going to go after the weakest link.
So
they're not going to go after the CEO. They're going to go after somebody that they can get their hands on.
Ben is talking about the need to provide talking points to your employees. I would call that a secondary audience. So the first thing you want to do with employees is you want to tell them what's going on. You want them to find the bad news out from you. How much better is that than them finding out about it from the media or in social media, right? 1,000%. Second thing you might want to do with them is give them some talking points. If this is coming up in your social life, if you see things in social media where people are talking about this, here's some points that you can make. Here's the stuff here's what we're saying in media, so that you can use this as well. These are the facts. Provide them with information because they're part of your team. I mean, the worst thing that you can do in social media with employees is have them go off and be reckless in social media. The next worst thing that you can do in social media is have them be silent. Striking that middle ground of them being productive, appropriate advocates for your organization is important. So thank you for bringing that up. Yes, in the back and then here.
Actually, I have a question because this is the social media related. There are a lot of social media. There are thousands of posts every minute. How can we make sure we monitor all the social response?
The question is, how do you monitor social media response? So I teach a course in social media governance at Sauder, and that's something I speak on as well. You have to have a monitoring process in place that you can scale up for social media. You might have a marketing person who's kind of casually keeping an eye on things, that kind of thing. In a crisis, you have to be able to surge. You have to be able to scale up. And so having a process in place in your crises document where you're blowing that out to make sure that you can listen, and use a listening platform. I use Hootsuite. That works for me. I can set up channels and stuff. There's other systems out there. But having something where you can scale up your listening is going to be critically important. And you're responding. We all tend to broadcast in social media, right? We use it as a marketing tool. We use it as an advertising medium. That's really not where it's most effective. Where it's most effective is as a listening tool to understand what people are saying about your organization first, and secondly as a way to engage genuinely with people. You know, not with bots, but with human beings. Whoop, in a crisis, this thing's good fun, eh? Kind of wags around behind me. It's a good question. There was something here.
Yeah, so these days we are reading and facing all these sexual misconduct accusations.
Sexual misconduct accusations, yes.
And ministers and high-level people that we know about are all resigning.
Mm-hmm.
My challenge is it could be a disgruntled employee
Yeah.
that's actually putting out false information.
Yeah.
And yet we are very quick. It's natural for us to respond and say, oh, they deserve that, good thing they resign. But in fact, we're guilty until proven innocent.
Yeah.
It's still the other way around. And
Yeah.
that could affect us in business where a manager could put their arm around an employee to comfort them or something, and that's
Sure.
misconstrued.
Sure.
So how do we deal with those scenarios? Because that gets out and it's gone.
Well, head them off. Have good policies in place and make sure to have good practices in place. Make sure that people have training in appropriate workplace behavior, that you've got ethics policies. And if they're not being followed, like if you're hearing rumblings out there that, you know, Joe's a little bit touchy and that kind of thing, have a conversation with Joe. And make sure that you head that off. Don't ignore it, because it's not going to go away. And head that off. You know, if something big blows out, you might want to put someone on vacation and go and get facts. Go and get information. Bring your HR specialist in. Maybe bring in an HR consultant from outside your organization who's going to be able to offer a good perspective on this, someone who specializes in that, maybe someone, a law firm. Take the complaint seriously and know what your facts are, and be ready to communicate in an appropriate way. Right? Put your values first. I've got a daughter at home, right? I'm communicating with that in my mind first, how I want her to be interacted with in the world. That kind of thing. And the best way to really, you know, you got to mean this stuff. So make sure that you're taking appropriate actions. Make sure you're consulting with the right experts in that scenario. Does that sound right? I mean, that's a sensitive topic right now, right? Really sensitive topic. And I'm a middle-aged white guy. Does that sound right? Any other thoughts on that?
Yeah, if I can just add to that.
Yes.
I think that it's incumbent on every manager or every CEO to make it clear within his company that there are channels for people who may have been compromised to communicate with somebody on a confidential basis to say that I'm uncomfortable when this guy comes into my office or does this or whatever.
Yeah.
So giving people the opportunity to communicate on a confidential basis, just to let them know that somebody's listening, the company does care, and the company's prepared to
Having
respond.
an internal reporting process for that kind of thing, an ethics officer, an ombudsman, that's really important. So thank you for adding that. That's a really good one to add. Yeah.
We have one. Hi.
Hi.
I'm Lydia from Purdy's Chocolatier.
You make good chocolate.
Thank you. We were just discussing.
I get my wife the chocolate-covered cherries every Christmas. They're awesome.
Oh, perfect. You should check in for the Valentine's stuff that's out right now. Super tasty. On our table, our accident
I
was...
like chocolate. Does it show? Carry on.
It doesn't show. On our table, our accident was one of your drivers hits and kills a pedestrian while driving a marked truck. The driver is not injured. Police, ambulance, and fire attend the accident scene.
Okay. It's a good one to end with. Go ahead.
So we thought that our first duty is to inform, and we broke our inform into two categories, internal and external.
Yeah.
So for informing internally, it would be health and safety, human resources, the department head for the drivers so that they can take action accordingly with their team.
Sure. Make sure you've communicated with the right people internally. Yeah.
We also thought our legal department may need to be informed.
Good.
We certainly would want to contact that driver as one of the internal stakeholders, and also our employees, because it's a business fact that unfortunately somebody's been killed
Sure.
through this action.
And rumors are going to start up.
Certainly.
And you want to deal with that, right? Yeah.
Certainly. And then externally, it's the customer that was expecting the delivery.
Yeah.
The emergency services, just to let them know we're the point of contact, and potentially ICBC, again, to inform them we're the point of contact.
It may also be the family member of the driver that you might need to reach out to them as well. Depends on where the driver's at.
Potentially, yeah.
Yeah.
And then our second action would be to research what had happened. So we saw two scenarios, one of which is the driver's at fault, and perhaps through their actions, through inebriation, through not following policy, and one through which the driver's not at fault, so the pedestrian technically is the guilty party.
Right.
And our response is governed by that.
Yeah.
Our response is also informed as to whether there's been media coverage up until that point.
Okay. And then be ready to respond to media if necessary.
Certainly.
Someone's been killed, so there might be media, but not necessarily, depending on the circumstances.
Exactly, and depending on the location of the accident. If it happened on Robson Street, certainly that's going to hit the media.
Yeah. That's an important consideration.
Perfect. And then for our response, we think in both cases we'd want to prepare a statement which would explain what had happened.
Yeah.
And we would also in that statement want to acknowledge how sorry we were to the victim's family.
Right. Be genuine.
And then within that second tier of communication, we'd want to explain what we do to prevent this happening in the future.
Talk about your policies and stuff. These are the policies we have
Certainly.
in place.
So if the driver's at fault, what's happening with that driver? How do we prevent this? And if the driver's not at fault, what policies do we have to prevent things like this happening that can be followed?
So, that's good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything more?
I think that's everything, unless I missed
So-
anything.
What I want to circle back around to there is planning and the need to have a plan in place so that you know about all those things and have them all written down, right? So these are considerations. Have we thought about communicating with the family? That's one that gets missed. Have we thought about communicating with the relevant department? Does the manager need to call an emergency meeting of the relevant department and say, guys, I know there's a lot of rumors going around right now. Here's what's really happening. That kind of stuff, right? So have a process where you've got that stuff where you can kind of check through and make sure those things are covered off, that you make sure that you're aware of your audiences. Is there a regulator we need to get in touch with in that situation? Maybe not, but you're probably going to want to get in touch with your insurance company. Didn't hear that on your list. That kind of thing, right? Make sure you've got those boxes that you can check off and come up with that stuff when it's quiet. When you have time to focus, when you have time to ponder and develop it and then edit it, get it shared around a little bit. Then when it gets hot, you're not in a scramble. Does that make sense? That was a good response, so thank you. We're out of time. Any final thoughts, any final questions before we break? Yes?
How do you manage employee social media posts on Facebook?
How do you manage employee social media posts during a crisis? Do you comment? So, can I give you the answer? It depends. It depends on the nature of the crises. So, in a crisis situation, your company is going to be asked to comment in social media. If you don't comment, what's going to happen? An employee is going to take it upon themselves to comment on the company's behalf. That's bad. So the first thing that you need to do to manage employee communications in a crisis is be there first and communicate effectively. So if you're working for a brand, something's going on, people are, there's a guy who's been picking pizza toppings off in the elevator. Thank you for that story earlier. It's a good one. Make sure that you as a brand are communicating about that so that nobody else in your organization kind of feels like they need to fill that void. You know what I mean? And feel free to go out and communicate with your employees about what your expectations are around that. And if you see a rogue employee, someone who's going off, make sure to communicate with their manager and have that conversation with that individual. They may just not realize that it's not appropriate. You also don't want to be in a situation where people are afraid to be in social media, where they fear it. Oh, I just can't be there because I'm going to get in trouble and that kind of stuff, because you want your employees to be advocates in social media, maybe not in a crisis necessarily, but generally. So you want to create a culture where people are advocates for your brand and know what's appropriate and what's not appropriate. It's never appropriate to be a troll. It's never appropriate when you're part of an organization to get out there and be angry with people and to argue with your critics and that kind of stuff. But debate and conversation's good, right? So help people kind of strike that balance. Does that help you? Does that answer your question?
We had an incident, and the incident was still under investigation.
Yes.
And a couple of employees were commenting when we asked them to refrain from any comment.
Yeah.
And their response was that it was their right.
It was their right. It's not. I mean, when anyone is commenting about your business, they're commenting on behalf of your business. They can't, because you risk getting into sharing confidential information and reflecting poorly on your brand. It needs to really be emphasized to folks that they need to just, if they have concerns and questions and stuff, you need a culture where they can deal with that internally and feel heard and feel listened to internally, and it's going to be acted on there. When you see employees going into social media and whistleblowing, you've got a cultural problem that needs to be addressed, and it can be very, very damaging for your organization, so you need to find a way to get on top of that. Any other thoughts on that? It's a good question, eh? It's a tough one in today's world. Yes?
For companies that work for prior, we did have a policy statement for all employees as part of their orientation that if there was a recognized crisis, that there was only one point person.
Yeah.
So that was well defined.
Have a well-defined policy in place, yeah.
There was also the opportunity for feedback, particularly when it was discussed and how to phrase, as you say, encouraging comments.
Where you run into problems is where people feel like they're not being listened to internally, that there's no mechanism for their legitimate concerns to be echoed upstairs. They feel like they have to go outside the company for these important issues to be heard, right, from an ethical perspective. So having a good policy in place is important. Having a good mechanism where you're really listening to internal inputs is important as well. Ben, last comment.
Yeah, just one thing I was just noticing is that there's no comment about partners. We all, we don't do anything ourselves today. So we have co-packers, we have, shipping companies that we deal with, we have all sorts of different partners that we have within our organization. Yeah. And making sure that they're on top of understanding what the crisis is.
I've seen PR people working for PR agencies go out and beak about clients that the agency works with out of another office and stuff. It's like, what are you doing? That kind of thing. Yeah, don't be out there commenting on partners and that kind of stuff. They're going to notice and they're not going to appreciate it. So having a policy there that, don't be critical of customers. If your company does work with another company, complaining in social media about their products and stuff is probably not a good idea. It's a good one. I think we're going to wrap it up there. You've been a great audience. I've really appreciated your level of engagement and your enthusiasm for this. I hope you got something out of it, and I'll look forward to seeing you at the next one.